6 of the hardest airports on Earth. A beach, a cliff, a runway built on stilts over the sea. I landed at all 6. 5 of them went fine. Quick rules before we start. Every airport in this video is a real airport. Real runway, real terrain, real approach, all recreated in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. I flew each one properly, hand flown, no slew mode, no restarting halfway through when it started going wrong. And I'll be honest with you up front, because it changes what this video is, I landed all 6. So this isn't a crash compilation. We're counting down from 6 to 1 by how hard they actually were to fly, and by how close each one came to going very badly. Starting with the one that looks terrifying and absolutely isn't. This is Princess Juliana on St. Maarten, and you already know this airport, even if you don't think you do. It's the one where the airplane's coming directly over the beach. The approach to runway 10 crosses the sand at somewhere around 50 feet. There's a fence, a road, and then immediately the runway. That's the whole gap between a public beach and a live runway threshold. So here's the thing nobody tells you about Maho. The runway is fine. It's normal length, it's flat, it's at sea level, and there's nothing in the way. If you flew this approach without knowing where you were, you think it was one of the easiest airports in the Caribbean. The danger at Maho isn't landing, it's the temptation. Every single video you've ever seen of this place is somebody coming in as low as they possibly can. And once you know that, you want to do it too. And that's how you end up putting a KLM A330 through a chain link fence about 400 meters short of a perfectly good runway. I didn't. I flew it like a normal approach, and it was the easiest landing of the 6, which is exactly why it's number 6. Barra, in the Outer Hebrides, and this is the only airport in the world with scheduled airline flights onto a beach. Not a beach next to a runway, the beach is the runway. 3 of them actually laid out in a triangle on the sand and marked with wooden poles, because you can't paint lines on something the sea comes over twice a day, which is the part that makes it genuinely difficult. The tide covers the whole airfield, so the timetable moves every single day. The sand is wet, it's uneven, and it shifts. There is no other runway on the scheduled network that is physically a different shape week to week. At the weather, this is the North Atlantic, so the wind is doing whatever it likes, and you get an airport where the surface, the schedule, and the conditions are all outside anybody's control. I took a twin Otter in, which is what actually flies there, and honestly, it landed beautifully. Wet sand turns out to be very forgiving. Stopping was fine too. There's a whole beach to do it on. Madeira, and this is the first one on the list where something actually went wrong. The original runway here was too short and there was nowhere to put a longer one. Mountain on one side, Atlantic on the other. So they built the extension out over the sea on about 180 concrete columns. Half of this runway is a bridge. Aeroplanes land on a viaduct. That's the famous part. It's not the dangerous part. The dangerous part is the wind.
Think.
You've got mountains on one side and open
Don't
ocean
think.
on the other.
Don't think.
And where those two meet, you get crosswind and wind shear that changes on the way down the approach. So I said 20 knots across the runway, which is a normal bad day in Madeira, and flew with it. And I got it down. I spent the whole approach crabbed sideways just to stay pointed at the runway. and when I straightened up at the last second, the wind had already pushed me. I touched down well right of the center line on a normal runway that's untidy. On a runway with a drop into the sea down one edge. It's the first moment in this video where I thought about it afterwards. Paro, in the Himalayas. The field itself at about 7,300 feet. The mountains around it go up past 18,000. That's the whole problem in one sentence. The terrain here isn't below you, it's above you. There's no instrument approach. You can't fly this on autopilot, and you can't fly it at night because there is no version of this where you're not looking out of the window. It's daylight, visual, or you don't go. And you don't descend into Paro, you follow it. The approach threads down the valley, turning between ridges with high ground on both sides the whole way. The bit that gets you is the end. You come round the last ridge and the runway is not where your nose is pointing.
200.
You're still turning, seconds from touchdown,
100.
correcting all the way down. I flew it in the
50,
Drogue Air A320,
30,
which is the real thing, and I
20,
landed it.
retard.
But I was still fixing the line when the wheels came down, and there's no version of that which feels comfortable. High tag, closed since 1998, and still the most famous approach in aviation. Here's how it worked. You fly an instrument approach, but it doesn't point at the runway. It points at a hill. A hill in the middle of Kowloon, with a giant orange and white checkerboard painted on the side of it. You fly straight at that, and when you can see the checkerboard clearly at about 600 feet over the city, you turn 47 degrees to the right and you land. That's it. That's the approach. A visual turn in a wide body at rooftop height over apartment blocks. People used to say they could see what was on television in the flats as the aircraft went past. There are two ways to get this wrong. Turn late and you roll out pointing at Hong Kong instead of runway, with no room to fix it, or fly it low and you touch down before the threshold, which high tag means you touch down on something that isn't an airport. I did it in a Cathay 747 because if you're going to do this, you may as well do it properly. And it worked. It is the single most fun approach I've ever flown. And then there's Saba. 400 meters. That's a runway. 400. Madeira's is nearly 7 times longer. It is the shortest commercial runway anywhere in the world, and it is not close. It's built on the one flat piece of ground on a volcanic island, and both ends stops at a cliff. Not a fence, not a field, a cliff. Straight down into the sea. Overshoot at either end, and you're not skidding onto grass. You're going over the edge. Nothing bigger than a twin otter is allowed in. There's no instrument approach, and there's obviously, absolutely no go around once you're committed. So, I brought the twin otter in over the water, got it down on the numbers, and then found out that landing is not the hard part at Saba. Stopping is. I was on the brakes the whole way and I still ran almost the entire strip. When I finally came to a stop and looked up, I was looking at the cliff edge, and there was not a lot of runway between me and it. That's why it's number 1. Every other airport on this list punishes a mistake. Saba is the only one where a mistake has nowhere to go. So, 6 of the hardest airport in the world and 6 landings. I genuinely did not expect that when I started. But if you want the real answer to which one is hardest, it's not the one with the best view or the famous approach. It's Saba. Because everywhere else, getting it wrong cost you a bad landing. There, it cost you the aeroplane. Tell me which one you want me to try next, and if you think there's one I've missed that's worse than Saba, I want to hear it, because I'm not sure that exists. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.